Okay, good. That's pinned. And as you can see, the dash top is now in place. Almost. I'm gonna get one more screw in there, pin that side of the dash, then we'll take the dash top back out of the car and we'll create a stiffening strip that goes along the front edge, because if you can see, that kind of wavers a little bit. We can't have that. It has to be nice and straight, mating up with this panel here. This panel is about 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch away from the glass to allow for the air from the defroster vent to come up and clear your windshield. That's right. We're not gonna have a vent in the top. Let's get that screw in, take both screws back out, take this out, and finalize that front edge and get this in for the final time so that we can get the ends finished up. And then we'll make a template of this area as well as the 2 end pieces here and over there so that we can take and draw up some parts in CAD, either with the name of the car or something, and get them installed flush fit with the face here and close off those holes. Okay, that pulled in really tight, really nice. So now we can take these out. There were 2 small tacks at the front that held this in place while I was fitting everything. Now we're going to take and trim this back and add that stiffener strip to the front of this. Okay, so we've got the top of the dash and we have a strip of sheet metal that will become the stiffening rib for the leading edge of that dash. Okay, so right now I'm trying to decide which way we create the offset. Do we come in with the dash, then up to the glass? Or do we have the dash come in and then drop down towards the glass? 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think it'll look nicer if we come in and then up towards the windshield just a little bit. So this side will have a step upward and then it'll drop down towards the dash. Let's go tip this in the tipping wheel. Being 18 gauge, a little more of a challenge to tip the panel or the material. But the first pass, I'm just going to create a light break. Just create a track for it to follow in. I could put this through the reciprocating hammer, but by the time I set all that up, we'll be done. Before I had the reciprocating hammer, this is how everything was done, by hand. A row of hammers there, and the steel bench, that's what I used to shape up a lot of the panels. You can pick up a piece of 18 gauge, 20 gauge, 22 gauge, and you can feel the difference between them. You know, you work with it long enough, you get a feeling for that. All right, let's go fit this up to the top dash pad panel and see how it looks. That's going to be it right there. That's a stiffener. That's all you need. So I'm going to get some clamps out and clamp this, or I'm just flipping this over and take another look at it. No, I don't like that. You see, when it comes up and then down towards the windshield, it doesn't look as good. So go with plan A. I need to get some vice grips. We're just about ready to install this dash top. Created that stiffening rib across the front, tacked it in place, well, fitted it first, made sure it fit well and everything aligned, and then added a few more tacks on the front as well as the back here. So we're just about ready to install it for the final time. I hope. So it can be a little bit tricky because it has to sit up on top. These tabs align with the holes. The A-pillar covers are going to cover all that, so that's not going to be an issue later. And that's it. So I'm going to get some screws into the end to hold it in place. That front edge looks nice and straight. And that little rib isn't very high. It's maybe 3/16 at the most. But being 18 gauge with that rib, it really straightened that front edge out. First screw in here. We'll get the proper fasteners afterwards. This is still the fabrication stage. You know, if I had to use a ratchet every time to undo this, it would get a little bit tedious. Okay, that tab needs to be bent a little bit more, or we just undo this one here a tad. Slide it over. There we go. And that's it. Boom. This will be all wrapped with 1/8 foam and then leather over top. We're gonna have a nice smooth dash top, no vents. That sounds really nice. There's no movement in this dash top. It's stuck in there. 2 fasteners. It's clipped into that little reveal that we left when we cut the original dash top off. So everything's held in place perfectly. We will have to seal the ends off. That's basically the next step. But I think I'm gonna go check on the interior panels, see how the resin's curing on those. If they're good, then we're gonna get the rest of the interior installed. The resin's finished curing. I blocked it out a little bit with the sanding block, just to smooth out any highs and lows, or any highs I should say. Just kind of normalize it. And what we're going to do is get all these panels installed, check the flow out of the interior, and then we have a little bit of work left to do to basically cap the ends, because, well, this comes up and then there's nothing. So we have to form up a couple pieces, get them installed, tack it in place, and just finish these off here, ones on the doors, as well as the ends of the dash. That has to be filled in as well. So let me get this side in here, and then we'll get the door panel on. I think I'm going to have to trim back a little bit because I've readjusted that rear panel to make it straight. So this is now not fitting in all the way. It's kind of shooting in on an angle. So I have to make sure that the interior molding does not interfere with the glass. And yet we need to install a window wipe on the interior panel so that it seals against the glass when the glass is up. We don't want any wind noise, or I don't think water would get in, but we don't want any wind noise coming into the cabin. Let's get the door panel on, and I'll show you a little something we're going to be creating. A little decoration for the door. Just hang on a second. Okay, so at this stage, we have this door panel. Everything's been kind of stuck together here at the back. This is still taped up to protect the armrest. And as you can see, we have 2 sections. We have a metal section here where the handle is going to go, and then we have the original section, and that's how much we have to add. So this will be upholstered with leather up here, and we'll probably do something down here with either an accent color or just the same color. We'll see. So let me get this mounted up in place. Like that. There's some hooks at the bottom to latch it. There, that's better. A fastener there for the handle. And we might get some screws on this in a minute. But I'm really excited to show you this piece right here. A piece of stock aluminum. We fabricate this ourselves. Basically get a larger piece of aluminum and whittle this down with a router, table saw router, to get the shape we want. And these pieces are going to be formed up and installed on the door to cover these fasteners through here. Now these are just metal screws. They're going to be replaced with flathead, kind of a flathead bolt, no socket, and nut on the back. And this piece, there'll be extra holes drilled with studs in the back, probably Allen screws or whatever, threaded in, stuck through the holes, and that's going to be the accent piece. It's going to separate this joint here, these 2 panels on this joint. So it's going to come down, in, and through here. Just like that. And that's going to finish it off really nice. Right now I'm going to get all the door panels and all the panels installed, check everything over, make sure we have appropriate spaces where we need them. So let's get some fasteners in here. I'm going to start at the front, because the front is still original Mustang. So everything bolts up there. I need to create a fresh hole down here at the back. Just like that. So I think that's going to be all we need. We're going to switch sides, and I'm going to get that door panel on and that rear panel in place. Now, as I mentioned, that panel is a bit long. I guess I should trim that. Now, before I forget, I've got a few pieces here I'd like to show you. They're 3D printed. It's kind of hard to see because they're dusty and everything's on black. But after it gets painted, you'll see the iNVision logo, and the center bezel will fit right in there. It's almost fitting in on its own. Actually, it does right there. So we need to take and trim up the end a little bit, but aside from that, there we go. And then we have this little blank end cover that covers up the vents on the end of the dash. Jump in here, right in through there. So there's a little piece of trim that has to, or molding that has to go away. But this is going to sit right in there, and it'll cover that up. And this will be painted the same color as we paint these covers here. That's going to come in really nice, and it'll blank off that big hole. We're going to put some switches here, but it'll look a bit tacky. Just leave that simple up there. Okay, so we're going to trim this back. It comes back a little bit too far, so we can get rid of that little tail. Normally I would cut the glass for whatever we do, but because it has holes in it for the mounting hardware for the Mustang power window packs, I can't really cut holes here. Scoring glass, breaking glass, well, not actually breaking it, but you're scoring it and then snapping it, we can do that. But to actually cut a round hole, we can't do that too well. So we leave it to the professionals. Everything lines up the way it used to, which is really, really good. That's it. That block of wood will come out. That's just acting as a spacer so that when we create the structural panel, we know what we're going to in that area. On to the other side. I have to adjust its curvature. It's a little bit flat here. So we'll do that when we take it out of the car. I should make a note of that. Adj for adjust. Yum. Let's go with a bigger screw. And this is one of the reasons we want to pre-assemble everything and make sure everything fits before getting any upholstery on. Because as you can see right now, I got one fastener in up here, but the width of this flange here, when we did this earlier, we took and placed this over top of this rear wall and ran the screws in. That way it didn't run away, the flange didn't run away. If we did the other way, that flange would actually unbend as you're putting the screw through. So what we have to do now is take and trim back a little bit on this rear wall to allow this to come this way, and then we can get the screws in. So I'm going to make a mark for that. There. However, I don't feel like taking that out again. We'll just make a note of that. It has to be trimmed back. Let's get that rear top section, the speaker deck, installed and see how that looks. Yeah, we're a little bit long. We have to trim that back. How much though? Let's get a tape measure, find out. By making that slight adjustment with that panel there, that brought that out. Everything kind of tightened up back here. So we're gonna do a new dimension on this panel. 51. and 50.5. And we'll have to leave a little extra room for the leather when we wrap it around the ends of the panel. Okay, let's see what we have here. 53. No wonder it didn't fit. 2 inches too long, plus a little bit. So let's find center line. Let's call it 26.5. I think it's that. Double check. It is. Wow. The math works. Let's get this installed, and hopefully it works. Oh yeah, we don't have to fight with this at all. Ooh, I like that. See? Unfortunately, it doesn't stay in on its own. So what we're going to do is trim up these ends. See, my marks were good. I just didn't want to cut away too much too quickly and then have to re-add it later. This is the stuff they don't show you on TV when they go and build a car. From what I understand, it doesn't make for good TV. Now that's sitting down where it needs to. That little corner has to go away. There's a little bit of a burr there, but that's fine. And that'll get mounted. This rear structural piece here has to come ahead a little bit more. But that's it. I'm going to run 2 screws into the corners just to hold this in place. Move that harness inside. That'll all be cleaned up after. I just snapped in over the structure. We're gonna have a window seal on this side. Once we figure out exactly where all this is, trim that up. Now the front, like I mentioned before, is original, so we should have no trouble getting those fasteners in. Thank you. Okay, that's all looking good. We still have to cut a hole here for the door handle. I want to make sure that everything opens and closes properly. Okay, so that's the door panel there, as you can see, and we've radiused that in quite nicely around this corner. This reveal fades off into the end of the armrest. I clean up that little hole there where the reflector goes, so when you open the door, people can see that the door is open. I don't know why they put a reflector there, but that's factory, and it'll look factory. And up here, we're going to have this aluminum trim piece. It's going to go right through there. It's going to curve down, a little bit of a jog, and then end up at the end of the door there. And this will probably extend into the rear panel as well. And then we have this end cap. We got to fabricate that next time, as well as the one at the front. So quite a bit of work there. We got that little trim piece I showed you earlier. And then once that's in, we have to take and finish off the end of the dash there. That's a factory cover. All that stuff through here is all factory pieces. Even the sill plate is factory. The only place it changes is right there where it comes up into our new rear piece. That rear wall has to be trimmed up at the back there, so that comes forward. But on top, everything is fitting in quite nicely. Get those corners to finish up, get the structure done over there. And those grills you see on top there, they're not going to sit on top the way you see them. They're actually going to be recessed down into the foam after everything's upholstered. So it'll be a nice flush top. See, that looks like an afterthought right now. Even with that little reveal that we put into there, it's like, oh, you just cut 2 holes and stuck the grills in. But that'll all be detailed later on, where they sit down into the bottom of the foam. And then you can see our bezel. It's going to sit just like that. The ends have to be trimmed up a little bit so that the dash kind of flows in. You don't want any little gaps up in there. I'm going to go close that door and see how the gap looks between the 2 areas. I'm curious. Oh, that's not too bad at all. Nice consistent gap all the way down. It gets a little bit tight there. I think the reason for that is because our wall is pushing it up and over. Well, we will have to address that before we go any further, because we can't work to something that's not in the right place. And that armrest blends into the end of the door. Came really close to the jamb, but we got lucky where we didn't have to modify the armrest in this case. If the door was an inch longer, it would have been a little bit easier, but that's where things fell. We're on the final stretch right now. I throw the armrest in, but you guys have seen that before. It's the exterior panels that I'm concerned about to make sure that everything fits. Okay guys, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little episode, and stay tuned for more. Take care. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel with your friends.